Welcome to Happiness by Habit, podcast where we explore the habits and strategies that lead to success, joy, and fulfillment. I'm your host, Silvana Pimentel, and we're thrilled to welcome a sales leader whose name is synonymous with the startup success. Kevin Gaither is a powerhouse in the world of sales. He has over 25 years of experience under his belt. He's worked in 8 startups, including 3 that achieved liquidity events. Kevin has built sales teams ranging from 30 to 550 people and has expertise in creating inside sales, account management, and enterprise sales teams from the ground up. But what makes him truly special is his willingness to share the mistakes he's made along the way, so you don't have to repeat them. So welcome to the show.
Wonderful. Thank you for the intro, and thanks for having me on the show. I've certainly made tons and tons of mistakes, and I absolutely love to share those so that hopefully history doesn't repeat itself and we can help some of your audience members avoid some of the mistakes that I've made over the past 25, 30 years.
That's amazing. Absolutely. Let's start with your story. Take us to your story, Kevin. Tell us a little bit about how you started in this world of the sales.
I'll make it really, really brief. I went to university with the intention of becoming an aerospace engineer, but very quickly I realized that wasn't of interest to me for a whole bunch of different reasons, and I ended up graduating from college with a degree in architecture of all things, which is really just to say, from somebody who has spent their entire career in sales and sales leadership, that under no circumstances ever in my entire life up until that point did anybody ever say that I should be in sales or that I had the gift of gab or any of that kind of stuff. But what's important, Silvana, is that when I got out of school, I took a $10 an hour customer service job, wearing a headset, answering questions. And I realized that the person next to me was making like $11 an hour. And I asked him how he was making $11 an hour. And he said, well, I've just been doing the job for several years. And I thought, this is no way that I'm going to go through life hoping that I get a dollar raise after several years. What can I do to control my income for the rest of my life? And I came up with 2 options at the tender age of 24: start my own business or get into sales. And since I didn't have any guts or money or ideas for businesses, I decided to take my hand in sales, even though, again, nobody had ever said that I should get into sales or you'd make a really good salesperson or you have the gift of gab. And from there, Silvana, I've actually been on a career-long quest to improve myself in both sales and sales leadership, knowing that there's never a plateau. There's always more to learn because things around us are changing. And so I've spent the past 25, 30 years, mostly at startups, like you said, 8 startups, 3 of which have had successful liquidity events. But I still feel strongly that I have a lot to learn, but I also have a lot to share and to give back in the form of my own learning lessons and mistakes and failures that I've made that hopefully other people will avoid.
Oh, that's amazing. Can you tell us a little bit about those mistakes? Which was the biggest mistake you ever made, and what did you learn about that?
Well, it's hard to nail just one of my largest, my mistakes, but I think as it relates to sales leadership, and really just being the boss or a manager, generally speaking, and of course I went and put that into air quotes, this is somewhat of a controversial take. I made a mistake when I first got into leadership of thinking that I could be friends with the people that report to me. And I thought that would be the case because if we're friends, I treat them right. They treat me right, just like friends do, and we can operate really well, and we can go get some drinks and dinners, and just, it's just fun working with friends,
Right.
Well, 99% of the time, Silvana, that works really, really well. But in the 1%, 2%, 5% situations, you think you can be friends with somebody, but when their back is up against the wall and you have to have difficult conversations with them, blurring those lines between an employee and a friend makes it very, very difficult in that conversation. And then second of all, what most people don't quite understand when they're the manager, if you are friends with somebody on your team, other people on the team are going to be looking at that relationship and they're going to look for scenarios about how that person is treated better than everybody else. Whether it's true or not, it doesn't matter. And so there's been plenty of situations in my career where I thought I was friends with somebody and I spoke to them in a very friendly type of way, like a friend outside of work. And that backfired on me. And it taught me, several lessons that, there just needs to be, you can be friendly and you should be friendly and respectful to each other. But crossing that line over and being friends with employees, 99% of the time, no problem. But it'll be in that 1% of the time that'll cause you most of the problems. And so I think that applies ubiquitously across all sorts of leadership jobs, not just sales leadership. So I would say that's one of my biggest mistakes. And it happens to be one of my most controversial opinions that when I share it on LinkedIn, people blow me up because they really haven't experienced what I've experienced, with hundreds and hundreds of employees where you just can't cross that line.
That's right. That makes total sense. Now that you experience it, yeah, definitely makes sense. Let's talk a little bit about building sales teams. You build teams from 30 to 550 people. Tell us about what's your personal framework for scaling a team effectively while maintaining a strong culture.
Yeah. So this will help us take me back to my background. Studied architecture and I started as an aerospace engineer. Okay. Everything about aerospace engineering and architecture has everything to do with planning and design. And of course, with aerospace, with any engineering discipline, mathematics. Okay. You're using math. Old school sales leadership, there was not very much planning. It was relationship based and not a lot of math being utilized. So when I think about scaling sales teams, I think about being very intentional about what I want. And you're bringing up culture. So you're talking about scaling a sales team from 1 to 10 to 500 people, but still maintaining culture. The way you're going to do that is by design. You can't just assume that it's going to happen. You have to be very intentional about it. And I'll give you an example. At ZipRecruiter, when I started there, which was, I think, the 7th startup that I was at, 0 salespeople, building it from scratch. And I knew that if the team was going to be successful long term, I had to develop like a mission statement. And so I literally wrote out a mission statement with words that were permeated the whole, like how we go about operating. Somebody once told me that culture is what happens when no one else is looking. Culture is what happens when no one else is. These unwritten rules in a lot of ways. I don't like the idea of an unwritten rule. And so here were 3 of the watchwords that I utilized from when I hired the first 3 salespeople till the team was 550 salespeople. Urgency, respect, transparency. Urgency, respect, transparency. And I spent a lot of time and a lot of revolutions writing out the mission statement that included those watchwords, urgency, respect, and transparency, and then speaking to every single new hire team, whether it be 2 people we're hiring or 42 people that we're hiring, I would speak to them, every new hire class, and I would explain to them what our mission was, why we were there, and how, that's the culture piece, how we were going to go about accomplishing that mission, urgency, respect, and transparency. So to put the finest summary point on it for you, Silvana, in order to scale and maintain culture, you've got to define what it is and what you're expecting moving forward, because when you're not there and there's 40 salespeople, how are they going to operate? You need to write those things down, and it has to permeate how you operate every single day.
Yes, I agree with that statement. Needs to be communicated from the beginning and needs to be all over the company and across the leadership and communicated to everybody. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's right. Look, this is just like any other relationship, by the way, one-to-one or one-to-many. You have to be clear about what your expectations are. It sounds so simple though, and it's hard for many to actually execute on there. But how do you expect culture to build if you don't communicate what culture you want? And in writing?
Exactly. Yeah, it's such an important piece, and a lot of companies don't even have it clear. That might be a big problem.
Yes.
Let's talk about your experience and talk about milestones. What is the biggest personal milestone you have achieved, and how it has shaped your leadership style?
Yeah. This may sound very, very touchy-feely, but I get my personal, it's not just one milestone, but I'm gonna group it into one milestone.
Okay.
When I see salespeople or sales leaders ascend and move into greater and greater success in their lives, that is a personal milestone for me. And it's not just, one thing. And coincidentally, by the way, you're asking this question, and there's a letter that's sitting on my desk from a sales rep who used to work for me. And let me just assure you, this was one of the worst salespeople that have ever worked for me in my entire life. And I saw him a couple of years ago, and he wrote me this letter after we met.
And reading and everything. It's like you don't see that very often.
Oh yeah, and he wrote, and I moved him out of sales because he was really bad.
Wow.
But he thanked me for the way that I treated him, and he moved into a role that he was better at, and then he started his own company, and then he sold that company during COVID, and he's found great success. And so this isn't just one personal milestone, but when I see my salespeople and people that I've taken chances on that have come to work for me, when they go on to bigger and better things, those are personal milestones. Those are the things that make me feel great. I could talk about the acquisitions of the companies that I've been at, and the being retired at age 50, all these kinds of, those are great. But really what switches me on and what I consider to be personal milestones is how I've had an impact on these people's lives. And then your follow-on question was, how does that influence your leadership style moving forward?
Mm-hmm.
What I've realized is that when I can help the people working for me get what they want outside of work, not just in work, but outside of work, career progression, pay off loans, buy a new car, go to Bali for a vacation or something like that, it shifts the mindset from a very transactional relationship to actually kind of a loving relationship. I care deeply about these people. I'm not friends with them, okay? But I care deeply about their success. And so my leadership style ends up being rooted in understanding what matters to them outside of work, and then tying the things and the goals at work to those things outside of work. And when I can do those things, when I can do that and tie those two things together, that is
when magic happens.
Oh my God, yes. And they're seeing great success in at work, but then outside of work, because what they're doing in work is fueling what they're doing outside of work. And that does require, again, as far as a leadership style, which was part of your question, requires getting to know my employees, the people that work for me, better than just, how was your weekend? Sounds great. No, what's important to you? What's coming down the line? Buying a house, exercising the stock options at this company, paying off debt, buying a new car, a baby on the way, buying real estate. All these kinds of things are important. And if you can enter into those conversations and then tie those two things together, that is a magical moment.
Sure. What inspires them? What's their why in life? For sure.
That's right. That's exactly right.
So let's talk about advice. And what kind of advice would you give to early stage tech founders with no sales experience on building a sales function from scratch?
Yeah. Let me talk about one of the mistakes, the most common mistake, which is really the opposite side of the coin for my advice. Okay. The most common mistake that I hear from these founders is that they're technical founders, they're product founders, they're engineers, that type of thing, no sales experience. And they say things like, I'm not a salesperson, I'm not in sales. And their first move is to then hire somebody to do the selling for them. That is a mistake on so many different levels, not the least of which being they don't know what good looks like. If they're the CEO of the company, they hire a salesperson to then do the sales for them. They're basically just sort of abdicating the sales function to somebody else, and they could be very easily duped by somebody who's just preserving their job and telling them what they want to hear. Just not good. They don't know what they don't know. The CEO, first time CEO or founder, they don't know what they don't know. So to now flip it back over to the direct advice, you must do two things. And I literally had a conversation with a CEO of a seed round funded company just yesterday. And I said, first, you must make the first, 10, 20, 30 sales. Okay. But Number two, with the time that I know you do not have, your chief bottle washer and doing everything else, you must also document that sales process to the best of your ability. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be fantastic. And once you're able to document that process and then follow your own process to close sales, that's then a good time to hire a salesperson and then hand them that process that you have created and keep iterating off of it from there. So make the sales first and document that sales process before you even consider hiring another salesperson. And God help you if your move is, I don't know sales, so I'm going to hire a sales leader who then hires salespeople. You make the sales first, then hire salespeople. And when 20 to 30 to 40% of your time is spent managing these salespeople, then hire a manager from there. But no sooner. Oftentimes I see this deflecting. I'm an engineer. I don't know sales. I don't know how to talk to people. You better figure that out. Otherwise, somebody's going to come in and dupe you.
Yeah, interesting point of view. Because a lot of times the CEOs they might not be good on sales, but they do have the passion for the company or the product they are providing or the solution. So even though they are not sales oriented people, they can actually execute that sale very well because they do sell from a authenticity point of view.
Yes. And they also don't realize that the title of CEO and founder,
Very powerful.
super powerful, but they just think of themselves like just any Joe or Jane, walking around the planet. That title means a lot, and they don't really recognize that. That'll open up their passion, their knowledge about the industry and the product, and that title will open up a lot of doors for them that they can utilize to close the first 10, 20, 30 sales.
Perfect. So following up on that thought, if you're building a sales team from zero, what is the most important first hire? How do you prioritize hiring?
Yeah. So I've had a change on this perspective in the last 5 years, actually. I used to say your first hire should be like a SDR, like a sales development rep to do appointment setting or lead qualification or any of that type of stuff there. In fact, I've changed my tune on this. My number one recommendation for the first hire you should make before you make a sales hire is actually a RevOps or a revenue operations or a sales operations hire. Why? Because the RevOps team is there to provide data and insights and information about what's happening around the revenue generation process and make recommendations regarding people, process, and technology to help optimize that. Okay. And data is king. Data is king. So we're not just, we're not sales leaders that put our wet fingers in the air and hope we can figure something out. When you have access to people whose sole job is to provide data and information and insights and then recommendations on people, process, and technology, why not? Why not do that as your hire? And there are plenty of companies that are out there now that are like outsourced RevOps. The way that they pitch this, Silvana, and I'm not one of these companies, by the way, so this is not a pitch for myself. The way that they pitch this is you get an entire RevOps team for the price of one head that will be on your team. So that's a huge benefit to these startup founders that are, they don't have infinite amounts of cash. So being able to utilize a team of people that can help you with data and insights and information and strategy to help architect your sales process, it's worth its weight in gold. And the objection is, Silvana, from the founders, well, Kevin, we don't have all the money in the world, and this RevOps hire is now just another cost center. It's not a revenue generating person. That's true. And personally, I have struggled with that challenge where it's like, well, now I'm hiring somebody who doesn't generate any direct revenue. That is, why would I make that my first hire? The reason why you do that is because that person can then say, great, we've hired a salesperson. Now let's make it better. Now let's make it better. And the operative metric that most sales leaders and CEOs should be focused on when it comes to a sales function is conversion rates. Conversion rates along the funnel, not just close won or close lost conversion rates. And a great RevOps team a RevOps person can help you optimize that through the data, information, and insights that they glean from looking at like full time and then developing recommendations on people, process, and technology. That's how I would prioritize those hires.
Yeah, that makes sense. The information is so powerful, and especially the decisions that you can make based on that information.
That's exactly correct. Look, I've been in sales my entire career, and I'm pretty darn good at math. But there's no CEO on the planet that should like 100% trust all of the information that I'm providing. One, because I'm biased, and two, because it's not really my specialty. So might as well have somebody who's objective, who can present the information on marketing and sales and customer success, that entire revenue function, and present that to the CEO for good decision making moving forward, which you said perfectly. Making great decisions moving forward.
Yeah. With so much emphasis on KPIs and metrics in sales today, how do you balance the need for data-driven decision making with a human element of leadership?
Yeah, that's difficult. And I'm, given my background, aerospace engineering, architecture, I tend to be very black and white. There isn't a lot of gray area, and I've had to really learn that. And the way that I learned that skill is learned how to balance that, is when I'm going to make a decision on something, it helps to preview it with other people. And one of the flaws that I've seen with other sales leaders and CEOs is that they feel like they've got to have all the answers. And because you're paying me the big bucks, so I better have the answers. And there's an extreme to this, and I'll just describe it in a second, but I now value way more than I ever did divergent and diverse opinions. I want people to look at what I've presented, a killer spreadsheet with a deck that goes along with it for our recommended solution to go do this, this, and this. I want somebody to go, let me check your math. I don't think that makes sense. And I used to not really appreciate that. Why are you pushing back on me? I now want that because I can make better decisions for the business, for my sales team as a whole, when I get diverse and divergent opinions. Here's the downside. And I used to have a CEO client who I no longer work with, and he has a fatal flaw. The fatal flaw is that he has to gather everybody's opinion and sort of democratizes, and his opinion becomes sort of very vanilla and neutralized. You have to have a strong opinion, okay? And it's not a democracy. You're taking in feedback and opinions from other people, and some of it's going to be galactically ridiculous, and you just go, okay, great, thank you. I really appreciate that, but that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Move on, okay? So you want to be going to people that are like trusted advisors that are going to give you consistent, divergent, and diverse opinions in a safe environment. But trying to go to like 20 and 30 people and make everybody happy, that is the other extreme, and that's the wrong way to do that. So balancing like this data-driven approach, there's the number. I see where the improvement is. Boom, let's flip the switch. You want to just take a pause. That pause could be 24 hours. I mean, it's not like take forever. 24 hours, and here's what I'm thinking about doing. Here's why I'm thinking about doing it, with 3 or 4 other people that you trust, that aren't just going to be yes men and yes women to you. Oh, yes, Kevin, that sounds fantastic. That is the worst thing you can do, is surround yourself with those types of people.
Yeah, I agree with that. Let's talk a little bit about data and AI. AI is transforming industries across the board. From your perspective, how can early stage startups leverage AI tools to optimize sales processes without losing the human touch again?
Yeah, okay. I have some very strong opinions on this. And first, AI is here to stay. No doubt about it. Number 2, I don't view AI as something that's going to like take sales jobs away. Some people are like very afraid that it's going to like take sales jobs away. I don't believe that to be true. In fact, the way, as a foundation for our discussion here, the way that I think about AI is like an Iron Man super suit. There's Tony Stark, and Tony Stark is in his Iron Man, Marvel suit. It enhances the person inside. But if there's no person inside, the suit's not going to really do much. And as we've seen in some of those movies, the suit without the human makes a lot of bad decisions. It can make bad decisions there. And so it very much needs to work together. Right now, I see two primary use cases that I think are worth talking about. Forget emails and, written communication. Like, that's fine. That's fine. And that's an understandable use of AI and generative AI. But I think about AI in helping us do two things that I think is going to be far more meaningful. One is middle of funnel improvements. So coaching, middle of funnel improvements. So I have a conversation with somebody, or I'm in an active opportunity with a customer. In an ideal situation, I get off of that meeting, Silvana, and my boss gives me very actionable feedback on how to improve on the very next call. That just doesn't happen at scale. When you're a sales manager and you've got 8 to 12 to 17 people that report to you, it's impossible to be everywhere all at once. And so one of the great use cases that I see right now is what they're calling AI coaching. AI coaching does that. You pump in a playbook to inform the model, and then salespeople go on, they're recording calls anyway, recording on Zoom, recording on Gong, they were doing all the call recording. The AI engine is consuming the call. And when the call is over, it gives you a whole list of things that you could have done well, things that you did do well. And it does that in such real time that's going to help you improve conversion rates. However, the second use case that I think really has areas for improvement is top of funnel pipeline generation. I'm still not convinced that the AI sales development reps, the AI lead gen reps, it's just not there yet. It's very obvious when you receive these emails from these AI generated bots or agents or whatever. It's very obvious. It just doesn't sound right. And I have not heard anybody tell me that it's really that effective just yet. And so I feel like there's got to be, the other use case is, again, top of funnel pipeline generation. How do we best utilize our networks? 125 people. I know 125 people. I'm at a company that has 30 people. I'm just making this up, of course. I'm at a company that has 30 people. Each one of us knows 120 people out there. How do we use artificial intelligence to help close the web of that network so that opportunities can present themselves with people that we already know? And I know that there's companies that are trying to solve for this right now, but not doing it, just yet. But top of funnel pipeline generation is critical for any sales team whatsoever. Sure, improving conversion rates mid funnel is important too, but if you can't grow the top of funnel pipeline for your business, you're just not going to be a fast growing company. And some of those use cases I think don't make sense, like the AI, lead gen bots that I was just telling you about, but others that are trying to use AI to help figure out who knows whom with a vast network and create those connections quicker. I feel like that is one of the most important uses of AI that I hope speeds up and comes into production much, much quicker.
Yeah, AI is definitely here to stay, and I would agree that there is a lot of things that can be done better. But also, there is such a big amount of information that is available, and that might be another application also for AI to
Yes.
filter or to analyze this data, right?
Yeah, no question. Yeah, no question about it. I mean, look, I'm excited about the future. And again, especially when my stance, like that I started you with, was AI is not going to replace sales jobs. To be clear, will it replace sales manager jobs? I do believe it will replace sales manager jobs, because a sales manager's ability to manage 8 to 12 people goes up dramatically when you've got a tool in the background that's helping with coaching. And one of my least favorite sales rep messages via chat or Slack is, "You got 5 minutes?" The sales rep in the moment, I'm working on something and my sales rep has an immediate need for something. I can't get to that salesperson. What an amazing use for AI to be able to help that sales rep in the moment, which then doesn't take away from my time, which means then I could manage more than 8 to 12 reps when I've got this automated tool to help with some of those other, those other actions. Forecasting. It could take days at times to do forecasting manually. AI is already innovating in that particular area, not only in current quarters, but even in future periods. And that those are such powerful tools. But anyway, I can go on and on about that topic, and a lot of people can too.
Topic. Yes. Let's talk a little bit about sales growth expectations. What is your take on big sales quotas, and sometimes they are unrealistic, and how does that affect the team, the sales team?
Yeah. So this is going to be another one of my most unpopular viewpoints. Again, all I say is look at my track record of success. There's very few people that can say that they have the kind of success that I have. So there must be some weight to what I'm saying, but take it out of it whatever you want. I personally believe that quotas are set properly when 50% of the team, 50% of the team is at or above 100% to quota. So you have 10 people on the team. I want 5 of those to be at or above quota. I want the other 5 to be below quota. For the sake of brevity in this meeting here, I'm simplifying that and basically saying 50-50. Okay. Some people say 70%, should be hitting quota, or 100% should be hitting quota. I know for a fact that is, the board of directors will look at a sales leader where 70% of their salespeople are hitting quota, and the first thing they're going to say is, wow, either quotas are too low or our head count is too low. We're leaving a lot of money on the table. How come that sales leader doesn't know that? So this is answering your question. I believe goals should be aggressive, but I also believe, like you said, that they should also be believable and attainable at the same time. But I also believe that quotas should be set in such a way that they generate the appropriate gross margins for the business. And in recurring revenue models like software as a service, if quotas are set at 3 to 5 times on target earnings, that produces enough margin for the business to help the rest of the business operate, engineering and customer success, et cetera. So think about this. A sales rep who expects to make $100,000 should have a quota of $300,000 to $500,000. Okay. Now, within that range becomes this realistic component that you and I are talking about here. Okay. If you're setting it at 5x, $500,000 quota on $100,000 on target earnings, and you find that 75% of your sales team is not hitting quota, then that is a good indicator that your quotas are probably too high. There's a bunch of other variables that I'm leaving out of this conversation for brevity, but that's a good place to start. I want goals to be aggressive. I want them to be financially viable for the company. But if I see that over 50% of my sales team is not hitting 100% to quota, again, all other things being equal, quotas are too high, and I need to make that adjustment. And if I start to see quotas below that X level, now I'm wondering whether or not we have a financially viable business, because there's now the amount of margin that's left over for the rest of the business is less and less. And so unless we have extremely long life of our customers, they stay with us for years upon years upon years upon years, there is a potentially a product market fit issue with the does that make sense? I threw a lot out at you.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
All right, you want to dive into any of that at all? You want to dive deeper or keep going? Move on.
No, I think that's good. But you can dive into something of what you said on this question, which is, what is one piece of advice you would like to leave our listeners with, or something they can start applying today to improve their habits or mindset?
Well, this will likely come out of left field, but I think your audience will appreciate it. I'm going to say 2 things. One of my absolute favorite business books, and I'm putting this air quotes, you'll hear why, of all time, is The Secret. Are you familiar with the book?
Yes, I am. And the movie.
Yeah, the documentary about the book. Yeah, absolutely. I would say that book, if you can get past some of the religious connotations that people don't people don't respond well to religion at times. And I'm not religious myself, but the book is all about a mindset, an abundance mindset. There's plenty to go around. And if you put positivity out into the universe, you'll get positivity back. If you expect great things for yourself and for your team, you'll get those things back. If you continue to articulate negative stuff in the world, that's what's going to happen to you. I'll give you an example. I posted on LinkedIn the other day, and this woman, and it was about mental health. Like, is remote work affecting your mental health, like your loneliness? Like, you feel lonely, and is that because you're clamoring for remote work? And this one person commented, yeah, like companies really care about somebody's mental health. Hey, if that's the way you feel, you're putting that out there. And so that means you're attracting companies that just don't care about your mental health. You are going to get what you put out there. So if you believe that you're going to be successful and you continue to manifest that, again, it sounds so touchy-feely, but it is dramatically, important to me and to my career. And I'm so glad that I read that book long ago. You were going to say something.
Yeah, I agree with that idea. It's like what you focus, you develop more. Like you get more
Yes.
of where you put the attention. Like focusing on either the cup half full or half empty. I always try to focus on the cup half full, and that makes me happier and everything. Like because you attract that positivity and good things for you.
That's exactly right. And the final piece of advice that's adjacent to that is never stop learning. Read, consume, listen to book after book after book after book. There's so much great stuff. And most of the books, 95% of the books that you'll read, they're garbage. They don't apply to you. But there's always a nugget. There's always like 5% out of every book that you can read that you could take into your personal life or into your business life and apply. And so when you think about that, now you're reading a book every single month, and you're taking 5% out of every single one of those books, it really and taking action, like real action out of that 5%, it really can make a material impact on your personal life as well as your business life. And so that would be some of the advice, non-obvious from a sales leader advice to your
the famous golden nuggets and especially the applications of what you learn. Yeah, I love that. Speaking of books, is there any specific book that you read recently that you would like to share with us or recommend that has inspired you?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. I can tell you that there was a book I should have read long ago, and I just was introduced to it last year. It's called The Right Kind of Wrong. I can't think of the name of the author right now. Let me just look it up. The Right Kind of Wrong. Here it is. Let's see if it's Science of Failing Well. The author's name is Amy Edmondson. Okay. The Right Kind of Wrong. Basically, it's a study about like how we go about failing in a safe environment and the different types of failures that exist out there. I wish I would have read that book long ago, because it helps you create environments where it's safe to fail. And it helps you understand the different types of failure that's out there. And anybody in any kind of company or any kind of family, frankly, can benefit, from that. And then one of my all-time favorite books was by Annie Duke. Annie Duke is a former professional poker player, and her book is called Thinking in Bets. Remember how I told you about my background, engineering, architecture, and then I have a very black and white way of thinking about things. When I read her book, Thinking in Bets, it helped me realize that everything is about probabilities. It's not certainties. It's not like a game of chess where everything's right in front of you. It's really like a game of life, and business is like a game of poker. You don't know what the other person is holding. You don't know what's coming next. It's hard to calculate the odds specifically because there's so many unknowns. And so when you think about decision making in business life and in personal, you have to be thinking about what decisions you can make that can improve your probabilities of success, because there just isn't any certainties that are out there. And so those two books, I think, are absolutely foundational for I could literally send to any of your audience, if they want to reach out to me on LinkedIn, my username is Kevin Gaither. They can reach out to me and I can send a list of like 36 business books that I've read over the years that I absolutely recommend and endorse. And Right Kind of Wrong and Thinking in Bets are tops on that list.
Yes, absolutely. Let's talk about how our listeners can get in touch with you, Kevin, and learn more about your work or explore any programs or services you offer.
Well, cool. Well, thank you. Well, the easiest way to find me is to just find me on LinkedIn. My username is Kevin Gaither, just like it looks, KevinGaither. And then the other way you can get additional information about me is going to Inside Sales Expert, that's singular, expert.com. And I actually have a whole list of 10 to 12 free guides on sales leadership that are available for download on my site. So if you're building, fixing, or growing a sales team, go to Inside Sales Expert and you can get some free information, including 10 to 12 of my free guides that'll help you avoid the mistakes that I've made over the past 30 years.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Kevin. Thank you for pulling back the curtain and sharing your wisdom, honesty, and expertise. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in to another episode of Happiness by Habit. Don't forget to hit subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with anyone navigating the exciting and sometimes messy world of startup growth. Remember, every day is a chance to build habits that bring us closer to happiness and success. See you next time. Thank you so much.